Okay, so today I'll be talking to you guys about database and this other thing called shared preferences. So the purpose of these two things is that you can save permanent information on your phone. So if you have a database, for example, it's going to write out to some external file some information you want, and then when you reopen the app, it's going to get information from this external database table or something like that, and then read it into the app itself. So the first thing you guys might want to do is search for shared preferences on Google. I hope I can do screen sharing with you guys, but shared preferences. You guys can hijack my computer. Okay, so if you type in shared preferences Google and go to the second link, the one on Stack Overflow, you guys find it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, really?
Google personalized.
Oh. Oh no, it's too smart for us. Yeah, there's a Stack Overflow one that says Android shared preferences.
The April 20, 2000.
Yeah, that's it. April 20.
Wait, is it the one by Bill Moe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
Yeah.
and ask by Sultan.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think so. Yeah, Sultan Sadat.
Wait, Sultan what?
Asked by.
Okay, don't look at the question that's asked. Look at the response and with a tick on it. Okay, so hey guys. Hey, just grab a seat somewhere. Try not to sit on the floor. I think we have enough places. There's a chair right there as well. You guys can sit on the table if you want to, or you can stand on the table. Okay, nice. You guys comfortable? Okay.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah, I was just telling them, go to Google, type in shared preferences, and click on the link that says Stack Overflow. Shared, like you share it with someone, and preferences, like you like something. Okay, so look at the place that has a tick beside it. There's a tick beside the correct answer. Okay, so as you can see from here, this person has wrote a public class that says app preferences, and he defined a whole bunch of things. So in a shared preference, two things matters the most. The first is an editor. The second one is shared preference itself. So how do you get shared preferences? So if you're in the activity itself, you can actually type in this.get shared preferences, and shared preferences are basically attached to the activity. And you can tell from here that the guy is writing a public class, which is something separated from the main activity. And here it is passing in something called contexts. So contexts are basically like the parent class of activity. So here it says context.get shared preferences. Can everybody see that? Is everybody on the same page as I am? Go to Google, type in Android shared preferences. This is the right one. Yeah, scroll down to the one with a tick beside it. Yeah, everybody see that? Okay, so here, you want to get the shared preference. So it is a class by itself. And what he's doing is typing context.get shared preferences, and then give it a name, and give it the activity, and then type in the mode. So you guys can actually find out more about it by typing in like what exactly different modes mean. If you have public, means that it's accessible in all activities of your app. If it's private, means just this activity itself. And then you can type, the next line says preference.editor. So that is basically the, it returns you the editor of the shared preference, and all you have to do is type .edit. Yep, so if you want to get information out of your shared preference, all you have to do is that get shrink and then give it a key. So everybody familiar with the key value thing? So if you have something like a hash map is basically a data structure, kind of like a dictionary, where you have a key and then you go in to find something else based on the key you have. So an array is basically like give it a number and then you find out like an element at a particular position, right? So hash map is you give it a name, which is a key, and then it gives you a value that's associated with the key. So right here it says get string, and the key for the string is sms._body. So what it means is that there's a value associated with sms_body, and then once you get it, you can get the information from it. And then when you want to put information to shared preference, you basically use the preference editor, and you realize that on top it says app shared preferences.edit. So this method actually returns you the editor. And then it uses the editor to put string. So there's a method called put string, and then you give it a key. In this case, it's sms_body, and then you put in something, the variable text. So whatever is in the variable text will be stored under the key sms_body. Everybody get that? If you guys can't understand my accent, just raise up my hand. If you raise up your hand, I won't be offended, because it's not the first time.
Why is there a second string in the string?
Sorry?
What's the second? The part after SMS?
That's the default value.
Oh, okay.
So if there's no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, that's right. So, and if you put string into the editor, you have to .commit it. If you don't commit it, everything will be gone. So after that, you guys are cool. Everybody get that? So this shared preference is useful when you want to store a little bit of information, such as user login, user name, or like sometimes when you build applications, you actually have something called a token that says that you are in the session right now. So it's like a token is basically like a string of a long string of random numbers and like characters, and you might want to store it in your shared preference because this is like simple information like a string. But if you want to store things like kind of look like a table, let's say you're making a game and you want everyone to type in their high scores into the game and you want to record it, I wouldn't recommend using shared preferences because you need like many layers like SMS_body 1, SMS_body 2, and then you have a whole bunch of like disgusting and not elegant looking things in your code. So to handle large information, I recommend you use something called a database. Anyone has used SQL database before? Anyone familiar with the syntax? Okay. Yeah, that's wonderful. So you guys will learn about SQL database from CS50 itself. So I won't be too worried about it. I'm more worried about whether you guys will learn it before the assignment is due. So yeah. Okay. So can you guys Google again? Sorry, it's like I don't understand why we can't get a room today. So this is kind of hobo. Type in Vogella, Vogella, and then type in SQL. It should appear as the first link, at least on my page. It says Android SQL database and content provider. Everybody on that? Yep. Scroll down all the way to... So you can read the top part to get a sense of what is happening with SQL, especially if you have no experience with SQL. So SQL is it's a database language. It's just for people to store information. So you can think of SQL as like Excel, except it doesn't have a nice GUI. So you have to give it commands to store information, and everything that you store in XML will look exactly like a two-dimensional table. So I wouldn't say that it's good for storing things like hierarchy of information, but it is a good place to start off. And designing database is usually the hardest part of making an application. So the way in which people make application is that first you have to decide what your app is going to do. And most of the time your app is supposed to show some form of information, right? And then the next thing you have to think about where is the information coming from. So I know some of you did some interesting project. At least some of you told me that you're going to do it. So I know one guy told me that he's going to make like you're going to pull information from Yahoo Finance, and then he's going to pass it, and then after that show the information. Yeah, awesome. I remember you just told me. I haven't seen the project, but I will see it very soon. So you have to think about where the information is coming from. So in his case, his information is coming from Yahoo Finance. Some of you might do things like CS50 courses. Some of you might do things like CS50 food API. So from somewhere you get the information. And then once you get the information, you have to decide whether you want to store the information. So there's an advantage to storing the information. That is, if your app is offline, you can still use the app to do things with it. Or like sometimes information is stored. In the previous case, like last session, I told you I stored information in a file, .json file, and I store it in the raw folder. But sometimes you want to store dynamic information, like users interact with it. They put their input things, and then you want to store it. That's where you can think about shared preferences or SQL database. And then once you decide, yeah.
So I'm curious, is it possible to just write out like a text file?
Yes, absolutely. This is the third thing I'm going to go through later. Yeah. So, so after you decide what you want to do with it, serving the information, then you go on to build about your views and how you want users to interact with your app itself. So everybody get the big picture right here. So making an app is really easy in that sense, but like programming, it's hard because you have a lot of bugs. Yeah. Okay. So you can read up about, this page is, I think, a very good tutorial. This is actually where I started off learning about SQL. I'm not a master at SQL right now because I usually hire people who knows SQL and then I just make them do SQL for me. But I think after a while, everybody quit. So, so I have to do it myself right now and I have to learn about the stuff. Okay. So move down to chapter 4 tutorial using SQLite. And then scroll down to 4.3. It says database data model. Yep. So to make an SQL database to work on your Android app, you usually need two classes. One of them is called SQL helper. And this is the class that you'll be using to create the database, to initiate the database. You can think of database as a table. So this is the class that you'll be using to make like a table, just that everything is in computer language. So the first part, the important thing, it says private static final string database create. So this is the create command that you give to any SQL thing to start making your table. So if you do CS50, you'll know that you have to type in like a SQL initiation command that creates the table. So this is where you have the string, and this is basically it's a text. It's just a string that says what you want, what kind of table you want to create. You can read up more about how SQL commands, especially the create table command, and you can understand more about like things like integer. What is a primary key? What is auto increment? So everybody got that part? So primary key is basically a key that you want to be unique, I think. Yes, okay. I'm not very sure about things like this here. So you want it to be unique, and this is the keys where everything that you put in will be associated with a primary key itself. It can be an integer. I know people who use like strings to do it. That means your strings have to be unique. Yeah, people who use like, I don't think anyone uses booleans. It's pretty stupid. Auto increment means that you don't really have to think about what kind of value you're putting in. So like the first value will automatically get a value, default value of I think 0 or 1. And the next one will be like adding on 2 and 3 and so forth. There are various kinds of data structures that you can use. So text is one of them. It's something like strings. And then you have something called varchar, V-A-R-C-H-A-R. So that is basically like strings, but you don't fix a certain length of it, so it changes accordingly. That has the advantage of making your database smaller, but it has lower search time. It has higher search time. Yeah. So read up on that part, and the next thing is the next method is SQL helper, and then you just call super. So these are things that you just be copy and pasting, and on create you just execute it. So these are code that you be using that you can just copy and paste it straight away. At least I copy and pasted it. And on upgrade, just use the same thing as well. Okay, the more interesting here right now, if you move on just very quickly, this is a public class called comment. So this is kind of like the user example that we had previously. So it's a representation of the information we want to show. So right here he wants to show a comment, and he wrote a public class called comment. And the next thing that's interesting is the data source. If you move down to public class comments data source, okay, so the first thing you need, very importantly, is a constructor. So the constructor should take on a context, as you can see from here, and you just copy and paste the same line of code there. So this is basically using a library that they already have. And then you should have the same thing, the next one, that open and close bracket. So these are like programming, what I call programming idioms, where you will see it appearing and appearing again. So all you can do is just copy and pasting. If you want to understand more about it, you can read up on it. But if you don't understand what's happening behind the scene, it's totally fine. Like if you really want to know 100% about SQL, it's going to take forever. Like people who spend the entire summer just doing SQL at Google or something like that. Yeah, or like Facebook. Facebook is actually written using SQL, like the database part. So you need the close method. I'd like to bring your attention to create comment. So this is actually something like is unique to every project. So right here, he wants to create a comment and then store it in the SQL database. Yeah. So you guys should go and read up on this. And then one part that's important is something called cursor. So you can think about like the whole SQL table as if it's an Excel spreadsheet, and the cursor is where your current like selection is. So you can move the cursors around, and then when you move the cursor around to the next one or you move to the first one, that's where you can start putting things in. So everybody got that part clear? Okay, yeah. So deleting is basically very similar. So if you're on the page, you can read up on it. It says like if it's equals to this, delete it, and things like that. Yeah. And then at the very end, whatever you do, when you open the database, you should close it. If you don't close it, there's memory leakages, and then you have a bunch of problems later on when you do like parallel programming and things like that. Yeah. So always remember to close it for good practice. Yep. So the rest is not important. Just these 3 chunks of codes are very important. So the first chunk, I repeat myself, it's SQL helper, and the next one is the data source. So the data source will be the ones that you reference in your onCreate function in your activity to actually store information. So if you move on to the part below 4.4, notwithstanding the XML part, just move down all the way to the activity. You see that in onCreate it says set content view r.layout.main, and there it says data source, new comments data source, and then you give it the context. This is the activity, and the activity is like a subset of context. So you pass in the activity, and the next line you have is open it, and then you can type in like various kind of so you, depending on what methods you have, get comments, put comments. That's where you can have all your interactions, and then close it at the end of it. So everybody get that part? So that's how you interact. You have a helper. The helper is going to be called in the data source to create the table, and then in the data source is going to be called in the activity to actually interact with it, to store information, to get information out of it. And then the rest is the same. You guys have deal with it, right? You guys have dealt with it, showing information, having views and everything. Good so far? If you have questions, do not be shy. In my opinion, databases are usually the hardest to get because debugging is really, really hard. There are 2 ways of debugging. One of them is you log everything. But just remember, the first time you create a database, the table is staying there and it's going to be persisting in the app itself. So what you have to do is actually to delete the database and then recreate it if you want to like start from a new state. Sometimes what I did in the past is that I created one and then I changed some code for the database and I try to run it again, but the old database is sitting in the app itself. So you might have some problem right there. So what you can do is go to the emulator, uninstall everything, including the database and everything. Just uninstall the entire app and then run it again. So you can start from a clean state. You have a clean database. Yeah, that's what you do on the phone. Yeah. So just take note. Sorry? So you go to your emulator, go to settings, like you just play with it as if it's a real phone. Go to settings and then uninstall the app. And then there should be something where you can click on that says uninstall everything, including the database and everything. Just uninstall it so that it deletes the database, and then you run it again. You won't have the problem. So I used to have this problem where the old database is inside, and then I try to run it. I always get like primary key like conflicts and things like that. I don't understand why for the longest time for one whole day. And then it's actually a very simple fix where you just delete it and then you run it again. So one way of debugging is to log things, where you like type out the stuff. Another way, if you're more interested, is that you can go to File Manager in your Eclipse, and then you can look at like some of the folders in your app itself. So just click to the right place where your app is leaving the folder. Just click to the place where your app is, and then download the database, and then you can open it using various programs on the computer to look at an SQL database. My best recommendation is that you use a Firefox plugin. I think it's called SQL Manager. Some of you use phpMyAdmin, but I don't recommend it. I just don't like the interface. So use Firefox. I think it's called SQL.
I think you can do it.
Sorry?
I think you can do it directly.
Eclipse? Really? Okay. I haven't tried using the Eclipse one. Yeah. If you want to know more information, just ask Dennis. Yeah, or you can always Google it. Okay. Sweet. And the last thing is writing your information out into a file. And it can be stored in the raw folder. I actually haven't tried it, but I know it's possible. So what people do is, let's say you have a class, comments class, and then you can actually implement like serializable. So serializable basically changes the entire thing into byte streams, like a whole bunch of cryptic information that the computer knows it, and then you store it somewhere. And then after you just get it back, and then you parse it and then put it back. You guys can read up on it. I haven't tried using it, but I know it's possible. But we usually recommend doing like SQL-like, just because if you want to implement like search functions and everything, it becomes very easy from there. Yeah. So any questions? Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to talk about the assignments. So as you can tell, this last meeting is supposed to be like really brief. I'm on record. Okay, so it's supposed to be really brief, so that I give you guys as little information as possible, but I start you guys off like resources on the internet. And most of the time when you're working here, we're just going to tell you we want this done. The first resource that you should turn to is the internet, Stack Overflow, Google, and if you can understand it, that's the best part. If you don't understand it, you can come back to us, and then we'll help each other from there on. Yeah, so a big part of Android programming is actually trying to find out information yourself. Yeah. Any questions? Okay. So the last assignment, I would expect you guys to implement everything. So think about everything. Yeah, everything. So you should have shared preferences, and then you should have SQL database. If you don't have time, the priority is SQL database, just because that is the most important in Android. Shared preferences is really easy to learn. I can always teach you, but SQL database is something that I really want everybody to be able to do it, just because I'm not perfect at it. Sorry? Yeah, so in your app itself, you should have SQL database, and you should be putting information from somewhere. So you should read up on how to have a HTTP connection or like a client, how to grab information from a API somewhere. It can be Google Finance, Yahoo Finance, or like CS50 courses. That would be wonderful if you can use it. And then after that, you guys should show the information out in a view, in a list view at this, which is what you guys have done. You can build off the previous project if you want to. And if you really don't have time, use a previous project and make sure you can store like persistent data from there. So in the SQL or something like that. Yeah, so I just want to see whether you guys can use SQL database in the final project, and you guys can team out in groups of 2. Yeah, groups of 2 are the best, but if you work in groups of 2, I expect you guys to do a lot more than what you guys will be doing. So at least have a few tables somewhere, or like have shared preferences, or if you want, just store it somewhere else. Yeah, store it somewhere else. And then you guys should have a search function implemented. So let's say you're pulling data from Google Finance or Yahoo Finance. You should have a search function, so you have a edit text, so it's kind of like a text box. When people type it in and click on something, you should be able to filter out the information and show the relevant information. So if you have like all the stock codes, for example, if I type in GOOG, I should see the Google ticker.
Wait, does the search need to be instant, or can it be like...
It's up to you guys. Yeah. Of course, instant will be more impressive. Yeah, I'll make it online. Just because I can't show you right now. Yeah. The same thing will happen. We are going to have the videos online. I'm not sure whether videos will be helpful. And I'm going to have the PDF for the assignments online. And of course, I won't have sample codes this time around. And submission will be online as well, just because Andy wants to take note of like who is still in the comp and who is not in the comp anymore. Yeah. Okay. So I sent out more information about it, but you can build off your previous project. Yeah. So if you work in teams, it's still we won't guarantee that you'll be hired as a pair. But it all depends on your previous assignment, which are like individual assignments, and there will be interviews that's coming up maybe next week or the week after you submit your assignment. So Andy will be doing most of the interviews. He's the one doing the hiring this time around. He's the new like Scott. I may or may not be there, but in any case, good luck to you guys.
Interviews for everybody or just for like people selected from the first round?
I'm really not sure about like what he wants to do.
Okay.
But last year we had interviews for everyone just because towards the end there were 6 people. There was only 6 people. But this year we have quite a number of people and there's only one Andy. So he might be just choosing people based on like their projects, for example. Yeah. So if you get into the interview, there's a high chance you might get in. That's all I can say right now.
Can you tell us what to expect at the interview?
What to expect at interview, okay. So this is the end of the comp.